When I bought my first camera at the end of 2018, I had no idea what street photography even was. I was initially influenced by a lot of the travel content that I was watching on YouTube from guys like Sam Colder and Matt Como, and I wanted to travel the world and make videos like them, which as a 19-year-old in college working a minimum wage job was basically impossible to do. So because I was so limited to the places I could go and how often I could travel, I just remembered that I live close to one of the most famous cities in the entire world. So I wanted to take advantage of that, and that's kind of what I did. My street photography journey started by me going to very popular Instagram locations around New York, and I would just take photos and do funky Photoshop edits to my work, and that was kind of how I gravitated more into photo than video because it was quicker to do. I was also really interested in landscape photography, and when the pandemic started to lift towards the end of 2021 and 2022, I booked trips with landscape photography in mind, to places like Italy and Germany and Oregon. And in between those trips, I was also going out to New York to shoot street when I was home. And it wasn't until the end of 2022 when I took a solo trip to London, and that was kind of my epiphany, where I realized that street photography was something I truly wanted to pursue, and it was what I wanted to put all my energy into. So even though I haven't been exclusively shooting street for all that long, there are some things that have helped my work get to the level that it's at today. Now, these are the things that worked for me. Take everything with a grain of salt, and by no means do you have to go out and implement these guidelines and say that, oh, Mate told me I have to do this to become a better street photographer. I just want to let you know what helped in my case, and hopefully it can help you as well. When you start photography, you will not have a style. You're going to be shooting a whole bunch of different things and subjects and genres, and that's perfectly fine because it's all part of the process. But the more that you do shoot, the quicker you'll come to realize what it truly is that you like to shoot and what catches your eye. But at the end of the day, this also just takes years of trial and error, and it's honestly always evolving. Now, if you can't do street photography every day, that's totally okay. In reality, most people don't have the privilege of going out to shoot every day or even like 5 or 6 times a week. So in that case, what I would recommend is try to incorporate photography into your daily life as much as you can. This is something that Roman talked about in his Behind the Sensor episode, so if you want to go see that, I'll link it somewhere above here. But it's been something that I've been trying to get better at because I don't have the privilege of shooting every day. So if you're unable to go out and shoot as often as you'd like, try to take some time to sit down and analyze your work. See if there are things that you can do better next time you go out and shoot, and ask yourself, are you happy with what you're creating? Are you creating for yourself, or are you creating work that you think other people want to see? See what's been working and see what isn't, and try out different editing styles. And if you do some of these things, then I promise you that you'll put yourself on the right track for progress. So the next time you do go out to shoot, you'll see if there are repeating themes or patterns in your work, and you can maybe lean into that. For me, I felt like my best photos came at night, so that's kind of what I did a lot for a while, but since then, things have changed. So if you push yourself to get better, especially in the beginning, you'll thank yourself later on, and just being honest about your own work is a huge key to progress. Now, not everyone will agree with this, but my suggestion is that you try out as many focal lengths as you can. In the back half of 2022 and early 2023, I was basically only shooting on an 85mm lens, and I loved it, but I eventually got a bit bored, so I got a 35mm, and that became my main focal length for a year and counting. For the last few months, I've also been shooting the 50mm focal length, which is a video that you will see from me very soon. So in a way, I'm still in that process of testing out what focal length works the best for me and what I jive with the most. But in my opinion, if you have experience with more focal lengths, the better you'll be able to see what works for a certain scene and place, and that'll ultimately help you make better photos. Now, obviously better is subjective, but for example, if you are close to a scene where there's a lot of things going on and there's a lot of different elements, a wider focal length might be more practical in order to capture everything that's going on. On the other hand, if there's something happening far away, or if you see a subject in the distance and you shoot it with a wide angle lens, the focus on that subject might get a little bit skewed. Now this also depends on your style and the way that you compose your photos, but I think for the most part, certain scenes will be better portrayed at certain focal lengths over others. And as a beginner, one of the best ways to help with this is shooting with a zoom lens. If you get a lens like a 24-70 or a 28-75, you can quickly adjust between focal lengths to capture a scene in the best way possible. You might hear a lot of purist street photographers tell you that using a zoom lens is lazy and that you should be zooming in with your feet, but when you're a beginner, you might not have the budget, nor will you know what prime lens you want to get. And the only lens that you might have is the kit zoom lens that comes with the camera, and that's perfectly fine. A standard zoom lens is great to learn on, and after some time, you'll kind of see if you gravitate more towards wide or tight shots, and through that, you can kind of decide what focal length you want your first prime lens to be. I found myself shooting a lot at 75mm on my zoom lens, so that's why my first prime was the 85mm. One of the things that is both a blessing and a curse, especially when it comes to street photography, is seeing life in photos. It's a good thing because that means you're training your eye to see in photos, but it could also be annoying when you want to take a photo of something and you don't have your camera with you. Not having your camera with you will actually teach you to be a little bit more observant, and not having the ability to take a photo will actually make you go through scenarios in your head of how you would potentially shoot it. You'll think critically about the light and how you might compose the shot and what focal length and settings you'd use, because sometimes you won't have the time to think about all these factors and you'll just have to react. And by going through these steps, you're training your eyes to see in a certain way, so that way the next time you do have your camera, you're more prepared. Also, by being more of a spectator, you might see things that you normally wouldn't photograph or things that you've never noticed before, and you could potentially make a mental note to get a photo of it next time. That could be whether a storefront has a certain color that's striking, or the texture of a wall, or the way the light is hitting a certain area of the city at a certain time. Being able to immerse yourself into a place and let your eyes wander without the pressure of taking a photo can lead to seeing things that can potentially make for great photographs later on. Whether you're shooting digital or film, the difference between getting a shot and missing it can entirely depend upon how well you know the camera that you're using. You need to learn camera basics, which basically are your ISO, your aperture, your shutter speed, and how they all work in conjunction with each other and where you can find those settings on your camera. If your camera allows you to set functions to different custom buttons, that can help you know your camera a lot better without even having to look at it. I used to do this thing when I got my first camera, and I would just kind of like sit at home and hold it. And I don't know if that was because I was just so happy to have a camera, but I would turn it on and I would, try different things and play around with the buttons. And if I, clicked something by accident, I would just turn it off and try again. It's really beneficial to get to the point with your camera where it's muscle memory. So that way, when there's something quickly unraveling in front of you on the street, you can dial in and adjust your settings and get the shot instead of fiddling around and trying to remember what dial adjusts your ISO or your shutter speed and potentially missing the shot. Once you know the manual functions and how they affect one another, then you can go ahead and set your camera to some of the auto settings, so that way you can kind of focus on your composition and let your camera do some of the legwork. Oftentimes I will set my camera to auto ISO, and I'll just adjust my shutter speed and aperture according to the scenario and the photo I want to get, so that way I can focus more on the composition. Shooting in auto is totally fine, but you should definitely know the manual functions, because when it comes to street photography, things change so quickly and you need to be able to know what settings to adjust in order to get the best photo possible. I've learned so much by shooting with other street photographers that are local to me, and I've been able to kind of see how they go about things, and I've taken bits and pieces from different photographers. A big fear for me, especially in the beginning, was possible confrontation, and I think that's why I shot 85mm, was because I can kind of be further away from the subjects and try to avoid that. And through shooting with more experienced street photographers, I've been able to see how close they've gotten to their subjects without any altercations happening, and 95% of the time, nothing will ever happen, and that has kind of helped me get to a place where I felt more comfortable getting close to my subjects. Shooting with other people also allows you to be a little bit more outgoing with certain shots, because you know that if something were to happen, that person is there to back you up. Now keep in mind that the more photographers you shoot with at once, the more that can kind of turn into a social hangout, which is totally fine, perfectly normal. I do that all the time, but just make sure that you keep your expectations for getting shots kind of low. All that to say, when you're out shooting with other photographers, you can pick their brain and you guys will have invaluable conversations that could help you on your journey. These, along with so many other things, have helped me get to the level that I'm at today. I still have so much to learn, and that is the beauty of street photography, because there's no peak or, you can't achieve perfection in street photography. You can only try to learn and get better than your past self. I really hope you guys were able to find some value in this video, and if you do, I would love it if you guys could hit the like button and consider subscribing for more videos. There's so many other things I could have talked about in today's video, but these were the things that really stood out to me, so maybe in the future, I'll do a second part to this video where I talk about those other things. So if you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.